Welcome to the Story Fulfilled podcast, where we deep dive into how each character and story in the Bible come together to fulfill the story of God. I'm Jay.
I'm Fletcher.
And I'm Abby.
And today's story is about... This is
Don't
my
do
favorite.
it.
This is it. Today's story is about...
Potty-turd!
Potty-turd's
Potiphar's
wife.
wife. Potiphar's
I've
wife.
been waiting so long to use that to say Potty-turd's wife.
Why is it Potty-turd?
Because during one of our VBSs there was a video and they were talking about Potiphar, and there was like a back and forth between the two narrators, and the one guy was like, Potty-turd? What? Potty-turd? And then it's, no, not Potty-turd, Potiphar.
Not
And
Potty-turd.
So good.
It is
So good.
Potiphar's wife.
There we
Which
go.
is because we were talking about antagonists.
Right? Oh,
this
first
season.
episode of season
The
4.
first
I completely
episode of
forgot.
season
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah. So this season we're focusing on antagonists.
Right.
So we're going to talk about some people that we might not have. You
Happy
might not
feelings
spend,
about.
Yeah, you
the
might not have
villain,
good feelings
the
about.
bad guy.
The villains.
Bad guy.
Bad
Yeah.
girl in this case.
Bad
Actually,
girl.
there's
Right.
quite a few bad girls in this season.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah. So, if you know the story of Potiphar's wife and Joseph, you'll understand why we're asking this question. So assuming
We'll tell you eventually. but not yet.
assuming that you are not married, so we don't want to encourage extramarital activity.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay.
But assuming you were
No
not
fornication, no
married, who is-
adultery, none of that.
No. Who is one person that you would definitely not want to go on a date with?
All right.
feel like
Easy answer. I've come prepared. Taylor Swift.
Oh, my daughter
My
just
gosh.
canceled you.
I know, that's
Same.
okay. Taylor Swift. I
So
don't
did
want
I,
her
dude.
to, think that I broke her heart and then have an album written
Right.
about me and
A
then
whole
all
album, too.
all the
It's not even just one
exactly.
You know what,
song.
All the
Fletcher? I don't
Swifties are going to
think
be,
you could
oh,
break
this
her
guy's
heart.
terrible.
Yeah.
They all hate you because you broke Taylor Swift's heart or something.
That's
I don't
right.
want to do that.
I don't think you could break her heart.
See, they're already after me and I haven't even
What
done
Abby,
anything.
what Abby means to say with that is I don't think you'd get the date.
Wow. Taylor, if
That's
you listen to this, I'm married. I'm sorry.
All right, Abby.
No, I don't have one yet. Go, Jay.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay, this one dates me. Like it reveals my age.
Hopefully doesn't date you.
Right. Fran Drescher.
No.
I
You
have
guys
no
don't
idea
know.
who that
There
is.
was a show. There was
Wait,
a
is that
show.
the nanny?
The nanny. Yes.
Oh my
Yes. Right. So the voice. I would get to, hi, how are you? And like, no, we're done. I'm sorry. I have a doctor's appointment.
Very similar to the voice of like Janice on Friends.
Don't know
but,
that
like,
either.
oh,
What's the
come
nanny
on.
from?
It's a
It's a
TV
TV
show.
show.
There was
Called
a
The
sitcom
Nanny.
Called,
It's called
The
The
Nanny.
Nanny. And she's like has a Joyzy accent.
Yeah, but it's
Joyzy.
yeah,
Okay.
really, really pronounced
Yeah.
Joyzy accent and and like a high pitched whiny voice. There's no
Hi,
way.
Jay. I can't do that. That's terrible. Anyway, go ahead.
No
I
way
don't know
near
what's
it.
going. Okay, I got one. I would never want to go on a date with Justin Trudeau.
Oh, I thought you
Okay.
were gonna say Timberlake, Bieber,
No.
Yeah, there was a
Nope.
hanging on the
Trudeau.
Justin.
Justin Trudeau.
I
Can you
don't
give us
like
a
politics.
reason?
Even with his nice new haircut?
No, I don't like politics.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
he's a potty turd. All right.
Okay.
Wow. Justin, if you're listening, yeah.
We'd love to have you on the podcast.
That'd be
We'll
interesting.
set you up with Abby.
Be
But
interesting.
again,
I don't-
she's married, so she couldn't go on
I
a
am.
date.
Yeah.
And he is too.
He is.
So as always, I maybe we should have chose a different question. Anyways, as always, we encourage you to read the stories that we are going through as we go through these episodes for yourself. So to get the whole picture of what's going on. Today's story actually takes place in Genesis 39. So the story of Joseph is actually very long ranging throughout the book of Genesis. But this story in particular is in 39. So, for a little bit of background, as we said already, welcome to season 4 of the Story Fulfilled podcast. As this season, we take a look at antagonists, or the bad people, the bad guys, the bad girls. And today, we're in Genesis.
Bad.
Bad to the bone.
Bad.
Today we're in Genesis, the first book of the Pentateuch. We've uncovered in past seasons that they're written by Moses. So Isaac has 2 sons. has Jacob and Esau. And then so Jacob then actually gets married to 2 women, which is a little bit of swindling that happens to him. So the swindler got swindled, and he marries Rachel and Leah. Leah, wife that he was tricked into marrying, and she has 7 children: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and the lone daughter of the bunch, Dinah.
That's pretty impressive. He has 12 sons and only one daughter.
Yeah.
I'm not that it's a good thing or a bad thing, but just the ratio. Isn't it 50-50 usually?
Well, no.
Not in your household, Fletcher. You have one brother.
You're right.
And
but as the numbers grow, I'm sure the odds try to. But one daughter.
They should, one of 12 or one of 13. And then Rachel, the wife that he wanted to marry from the beginning, has 2 children, Joseph and Benjamin. Jacob also has 4 more sons with the servants of his wives, and they are Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And so these are the sons of Israel that become the 12 tribes of Israel.
Now, there's going to be a test at the end, and you have to restate
right.
all
of the
tribes
names
and all the sons
tribes.
of Israel.
Okay.
So you better remember those in practice.
That's right.
There's going to be a test, and it's graded. So, let's talk about some history of what's going on. Today's story is in Egypt, which Abby will go into a little bit more detail later.
Stop stealing my thunder.
As for Egypt, what's going on at the time, and we kind of have to figure out when this happened, because it's not like you read in the Bible, you go into Genesis, this takes place in 1634. No,
right.
We have to actually do some math and do some investigation to kind of figure out when it's going on. So we've done this in the past, and based on some biblical accounts and other things, we think the Exodus took place about 480 years before the reign of King Solomon, and that puts the Exodus around the 15th century BC.
Right.
And that would be the Egyptian New Kingdom around the 18th dynasty. If you want to look into Egyptian history, it's really cool. And they've been there forever, like we've said in the past.
Yeah.
So you can basically look at a BC date and go, this is what dynasty, what kingdom of Egypt at the time.
Yeah.
So you go use another biblical reference, and it puts the Hebrews in Egypt with Joseph and Jacob approximately 400 years before that. So that means that today's story is probably around the 19th century BC. So that's 1900s BC. And that puts Egypt in the Middle Kingdom around the 12th dynasty. Another cool thing, it kind of helps explain, there's a verse in, Exodus 1:8, and it says, there came a Pharaoh that knew not Joseph. Right. And if you look at the timelines between Exodus and this time with Joseph, there's actually been a whole dynasty switch. Everything's changed up. So it would make sense that the pharaohs didn't remember this guy who really, really helped out Egypt. So that puts us 19th century, Middle Kingdom, 12th dynasty. I'm trying to remember all the dates. And that's what's going on in Egypt.
There we go. So as Fletcher said multiple times, this story takes place in Egypt.
Which is modern day Egypt.
Right. It's nice and easy for you this week.
There we go.
And has always been Egypt.
Always will be.
It's never
Egypt.
changed.
And it's probably around Cairo. There's some scientific evidence in some ice cores that were found in Mount Kilimanjaro, which is where the Nile gets its water from. Wow. And it actually reveals that there was a drought that took place around 3,600 years ago, which is around the time that the Bible sets this story, the time of Joseph. The other interesting piece about this is that there's this lake called, I don't know how to say this correctly, Quran Lake, that has some evidence that points it to a drought around that time as well. And it's also named the waterway of Joseph. And so people actually kind of wonder if it was Prime Minister Joseph who was the character of the story. So I will have a link in the show notes for anybody that wants to read about that. It was pretty interesting stuff.
And I hope Abby will put my really interesting Egypt article or paper that dictates when
Fletcher's
this takes place.
description of it was really long and really informative, so it was fun.
It was cool. It had a lot of Egypt stuff in it.
Everyone wants to read
but nobody
really
wants to
long
hear
article.
that much. That's for sure.
I wonder why my kids call me a nerd.
Yeah. All right. Let's start our story about Potiphar's wife and Joseph.
Potty-turd.
So we start out our story in Canaan, not in Egypt. Abby didn't mention this. Haha. No, I'm just joking. And we have our favorite dysfunctional family, Israel and the Hebrews. Jacob sends Joseph out to go check on some of his brothers that are out wandering. So on his way there, the brothers notice, oh, there's Joseph coming in the distance. What are we going to do? Like, this guy's terrible. We should kill him.
Yeah.
That's what they plan. So they hatch this little plan. They're like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to kill him and throw him in the cistern. Oh, no, that's probably not a good idea. Let's just leave him in the cistern to die and then tell our father that, a wild animal ate him or something.
Right.
So he comes, they throw him in this cistern and they let him be. And then they're like, oh, this is a good idea. They see some merchants traveling by and they end up selling Joseph to the merchants into slavery.
Yeah.
Then they take his coat, his nice, expensive, fancy coat, pour some blood on it, and then give it back to their father and say, your son was eaten by a wild animal.
I love it. This was Judah's idea,
Yeah.
and it's like he kind of makes himself out to be a little bit more like righteous than everyone else. Oh no,
let's
we
not
shouldn't
kill
him. We should do this, as if that's any better.
Abandon him and sell him into slavery
Exactly.
instead.
So quite a family to belong to. They've already hated you. Now they've sold you into slavery into Egypt.
Yeah.
So the next time we hear from Joseph, he's officially been sold into slavery and he's living in Egypt. And he belongs to this Egyptian official and captain of the guard. His name is Potiphar.
Potty-turd.
Fletcher hates it so
his name
much.
is Potiphar.
I was waiting to time that. That's
And in the scripture, it says that God was with Joseph and he became successful in everything he did.
Yeah.
And if you've read through Genesis, you probably recognize that sentence, and he was successful in everything he did to his father, Jacob. When Jacob was working for his father-in-law, everything he did, he was successful.
Yeah.
And Joseph seems to have inherited the same blessing from God. So Potiphar notices this, and he's like, I got a gold mine going on here. He puts Joseph in charge of everything.
Right.
And because of that, Potiphar's entire house is blessed.
Right.
And is successful. It even says that Potiphar just let him do whatever he wants. He put him in charge of everything. It said Potiphar was only responsible for the food that he ate.
Right.
I think, Fletcher, if you had that person, I think you would want to still be in charge of the
I
food
would
you
too,
ate.
yeah. Ooh, that looks good. I'm going to go have that for dinner. Potiphar, what about your taxes? Oh, Joseph will handle that. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything was in Joseph's control.
That's it.
So Joseph, he's this young, attractive. Abby mentioned this. What was it?
There's only like two people in the Bible who are actually men in the Bible. They're actually mentioned to be attractive, and one's Joseph, the other one's David.
Yeah.
So this that tells you something.
That they must have been really attractive.
Because there are a lot of men in the Bible.
Right.
There sure are.
Apparently, a lot of ugly men.
Or just average looking men.
Average,
So
yeah.
Joseph is not your average looking guy. He's a young, good looking, hardworking, successful man. And he starts to, catch the eye of Potiphar's wife. And one day, Potiphar's wife comes up and approaches him and says, sleep with me.
Right.
And Joseph, he's an honorable man. And he responds, no one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing?
Right.
He's like, look, I've gotten everything from Potiphar. The only thing I'm not allowed to be around is you.
Food.
I'm your exactly. Well, maybe the food, his
Yeah,
menu.
yeah.
But his wife is the only thing that he's kept from him.
Right.
Rightly so.
Because
and he said,
it's
how
his
could
wife.
I commit this sin against God?
And that's an interesting note that he notes that it would actually be a sin against God, that it would actually grieve God for him to do this.
It wouldn't just hurt Potiphar.
It's
exactly.
not just Potiphar that gets hurt, or Potiphar's wife, in
In the long run, yeah.
But it's sinning against God to do this to another human, which also just kind of highlights that God grieves with us. Like when we are hurt by other individuals, that grieves God as well. And so when we sin, and this is something for us to just remember in any of the things that we do, if we are hurting other people, we need to recognize that that's actually hurting God.
Or even if you don't see the harm, you're like, oh, well, who's it going to hurt?
Right.
It's harming God because it's a sin against him, not just another person.
Yeah.
So Joseph says no. She asks day in and day out. She's asking, sleep with me, sleep with me, sleep with me. Joseph, every day, no, I'm not going to sleep with you.
Right.
So one day she kind of plans this out. She catches Joseph. There's nobody else in the house. It's just the two of them. She ends up grabbing onto him and saying, sleep with me. Joseph's like, okay, I got to get out of here. He runs away, but she manages to grab his coat
Right.
and holds on to it as he gets away. The next thing she does, she screams and she calls out for her servants and says, Joseph tried to rape me, but he just ran when I screamed.
Right.
And they all are like, planning around. And then Potiphar comes home and she tells him the same story. Joseph tried to rape me and ran when I screamed. Mm-hmm. And Potiphar hears this and he's obviously furious and throws Joseph in jail.
Right.
And so that's how our story actually ends today, is Joseph gets thrown into jail for something that he didn't do.
Yeah. Which is also like, you think, okay, could he have, when my kids are having troubles, I always say to them, go find an adult, go tell somebody. But in this case, if Potiphar were to do that, when we see how the story actually played out,
if Joseph had
we see how the story plays out. He wouldn't have been believed. Like if he would have gone to,
he's
Potiphar,
the slave,
right?
He's not the one in authority. He has no control over the situation, which is
So there's that power imbalance. If he would have gone to Potiphar and said, "Hey, Potty-turd, your wife is, I don't know what to do here, but I just want to let you know."
Nobody wants to hear that.
He'd still go to prison. Yeah. Like, don't tell me something like that about my wife. You're obviously wrong. And
really difficult situation to be in.
Very difficult situation.
Yeah. So how does this story fit into the story of God throughout the Bible?
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about antagonists this season, and that's kind of how we've been framing it, is that Joseph has been put into this difficult situation. He doesn't know how to respond, and the right move for him is not obvious. Like, sure, you could say, oh, he shouldn't have been there, or he shouldn't have done this, but he was caught in that situation with no other options, and he was thrown in jail.
Right.
And if you keep reading the story in Genesis 40 or 41, he ends up in prison and is able to meet the Pharaoh because of that. And he basically gets thrown in jail and does the same thing he did with Potiphar. He worked for the jailer and succeeded in everything, and God blessed him in that and was able to save all of Egypt.
Right.
And he worked and just did what he was capable of doing in that situation, and did the best he could in the situation he was in.
And as we talk about all of the things that he could have done, or should have, could have, would have, whatever, the one thing that he definitely did was he remained pure, right? Like he avoided the sin that was placed before him, and he continually avoided that. And we see the blessing for that, but obviously much longer down the road, as we see. Immediately, it doesn't look like a blessing, but as he continues to persist in living a life that honors God, we then see that. And actually, there's this interaction that he has with his brothers later on as they're reunited, and he says to them, what you meant for harm, God used for good. And blessed them in all of Egypt through it. And if he were to ever have an encounter with Potiphar's wife again, he could say the same thing to her. Like, what you meant for harm actually worked out for, and actually it did. It ended up saving Egypt.
And her, his family, and her, absolutely.
Yeah. So
that's a good conclusion. Yeah, what you meant for evil, God used for good. And if you're in that situation where somebody's wronging you or something bad is going on, obviously try to get out of that situation. But if it's inevitable, you have to use the cards you've been dealt, and God will work through that.
And what we don't see Joseph doing is fighting for his rights and fighting like, no, I've been wronged here. And I'm not saying lay down and let people run over you, but there is an element of laying down of our rights that we need to live in as followers of Jesus. We are laying down our rights, and some of that is our right to be understood, our right to be right, and we just continue to live in a way that honors God, knowing that he has an ultimate plan, and that we can trust him and his goodness in that.
Cool.
I like that. All right. Well, I guess that concludes the first episode of Season 4.
Season 4, Potiphar's Wife.
Wowzers.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye for now.